I've noticed we're losing subscribers. Not the YouTube kind, but the kind that swore they'd be in my life forever. Funny how that works. One day you're surrounded by people who claim to love you, and the next, you're watching them walk away like you were just another phase in their lives. By the way, if you're here, do me a favor, subscribe. It's free, and unlike some people in my life, you won't regret sticking around. I had planned everything so carefully. I cut ties, changed my number, deleted my old social media. I wasn't going to be that girl, the one who clings to a man just because she's having his baby. Jeff had made his choice and I had made mine. He didn't need to know. Until now. I was back in California for one weekend, just long enough to celebrate a friend's engagement before my life became all about late-night feedings and diaper changes. I had kept my pregnancy a secret from everyone who might run their mouths, and I was careful. No pictures showing my belly, no unnecessary risks. I thought I was safe. Then Tanya walked in. Jeff's cousin Tanya was the worst possible person I could run into. She was loud, nosy, and lived for drama. The second she spotted me, her voice rang out across the store. "Oh my God, you're pregnant?" It wasn't a question. It was an announcement. I froze. People turned to look. My stomach, now impossible to hide, gave her all the confirmation she needed. "Does Jeff know?" she pressed, eyes gleaming. I lied. "It's not his." Tanya wasn't buying it. "How could you move on so fast? You were still hooking up earlier this year." My stomach dropped. I had no idea that was public knowledge. I thought Jeff would have kept it quiet, that our past was just that, past. I forced a smile, pretending I wasn't unraveling inside. "I have a boyfriend," I lied again. "I'm only 5 months along." She stared at my stomach, skeptical, but eventually she muttered a forced congratulations and walked away. I barely made it to the car before the panic set in. I prayed that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Within hours, my phone was blowing up. Friends messaged me saying Jeff was desperately trying to reach me. He had no way of contacting me directly, no number, no social media, but now he knew. And he wanted answers. I still had 2 days left in California. And nowhere to hide. I thought I could still get away with it. Even after Tanya ran her mouth, even after Jeff started blowing up my friends' inboxes trying to reach me, I convinced myself I could just leave, go back home, and pretend none of this ever happened. But doubt was creeping in. My friends were split. Some told me to keep lying, to stick to my story that the baby wasn't his. Others insisted I tell him the truth. I had made it this far on my own, so why should I drag him into it now? But deep down, I knew the answer. So I gave in. Jeff managed to reach my friend on Instagram, and before I knew it, he was demanding to meet in person. He wouldn't settle for a phone call. It had to be face to face. And honestly, I just wanted to get it over with. It was almost 10 at night when my friend and I pulled up to his parents' house. It was a mistake. I should have chosen a neutral place, but his family had always treated me like one of their own. When his mom answered the door, she hugged me like nothing had changed. I could tell she wanted to touch my stomach, but she held back. Then I walked into the living room and saw him. And Grace. They were sitting together on the couch, holding hands. My heart didn't race. My stomach didn't drop. I felt nothing. And that surprised me more than anything. The house was a mess. Empty cups, confetti like a party had just ended. I barely had time to process it before Jeff spoke. "You might have fooled Tanya," he said. "But I know there's no way you moved on that fast. Why didn't you tell me?" I looked him dead in the eye and gave him the truth. "The last time we talked, you told me not to contact you unless I was literally dying," I said. "Well, I'm not dying." Silence. Then Grace spoke. "You ruined my proposal." At first, I thought she was exaggerating. Then I found out the truth. Tanya hadn't just told Jeff about my pregnancy. She had done it at their engagement party. Right in the middle of the speeches, right after he got down on one knee, Tanya stood up and made her little announcement. She was so glad Jeff didn't get stuck raising my baby. All hell broke loose. And here I was, standing in the aftermath of it, realizing that the man who left me because he was scared of marriage and fatherhood had just proposed to someone else. And now, he had a choice to make. I stood there, gripping my own arms like they were the only thing holding me together. He had proposed to her. She got the ring. She got the celebration. She got everything I had dreamed of, and it took everything in me to act like it didn't bother me. But it did. His mom jumped in before things could escalate. "Grace, this isn't her fault," she said gently. "Now isn't the time for this." Jeff turned to me, his voice tight. "Obviously you can't move now." "I already did," I said. "I was only in California for the weekend." He shook his head, frustrated. "Then you have to move back." I let out a breath. "No. That one word hit him like a slap. I left months ago, I continued, forcing myself to stay calm. My job, my house, my doctors, everything is back home. California isn't my home anymore. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration bubbling over. So what then? Am I just supposed to send a paycheck once a month? His voice cracked. This isn't how it was supposed to happen. I almost laughed. Supposed to happen? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to soften. Jeff, if you're worried about your future, don't be. I don't want anything from you. I have everything taken care of, the finances, the childcare, even a college fund. You can still marry Grace. You can have your own family. His face twisted and then he teared up. You know how I feel about this, he murmured. And I did. When he broke up with me, it was because he didn't believe he'd ever be a good father. Because of what his dad did to him, walking out on his family when he was 6 years old. You're not him, I said softly. You're better than him. You always have been. His mom broke. She started crying, shoulders shaking as his stepdad pulled her into a hug. Jeff's voice was thick. I can't just not be in his life. You don't understand what that would do to him. My breath caught. Him? Jeff's eyes widened and I realized what I had done. I hadn't meant to reveal the gender yet. But there it was. His expression softened in a way I had never seen before. It's a boy? I nodded and for the first time he looked happy. Can I? His voice was hesitant. Can I feel him? Before I could even answer, Grace let out a sound that cut through the room like a blade, a loud, gut-wrenching sob. She stormed out, disappearing into the kitchen, and Jeff hesitated only a second before following. His mom, still crying, hurried after them. His stepdad trailed behind. And just like that, my friend and I were alone. All we could hear was muffled sobbing from the kitchen, Grace's broken voice, Jeff's hushed responses. His mom's quiet sniffles. The walls were closing in. I stood there, in the middle of a room that had just been filled with laughter, with celebration, with confetti and champagne, toasting to their perfect future. And I couldn't breathe. I turned to my friend. Let's get the hell out of here. We left without a word. We stayed in a hotel that night, and I caught an early flight home the next morning. Now, I'm back, focusing on my nursery, trying to move forward. I told my friends I talked to Jeff, told them to block him if he kept reaching out. I know this isn't over. I know I'll have to reach out again. No matter what he did to me, I won't keep him from his son if he truly wants to be there. But I don't know how this is going to work. And for the first time since this all started, I'm scared. A week after I got home, my phone rang. It was his number. I let it go to voicemail. His voice, calmer than before, filled the silence. Hey, can you call me back? We need to talk. My blood boiled. Because there was no way he should have been able to find my number. I had changed it after moving. Only a handful of close friends had it. Someone betrayed me. I texted him instead. How did you get my number? That's not important. I just want to talk. It is to me. He still wouldn't tell me. I refused to answer until he did. Finally he caved. He sent a screenshot of the conversation. And my stomach dropped. It was one of the last people I ever expected to betray me. That's a whole other story. But eventually I called him. And I heard the words I knew were coming. I want to be in our son's life. I sighed. I figured. He admitted he had no idea how it was going to work. Neither did I. But there was no shouting. No threats of lawyers. No dramatic declarations of grandparents' rights like some people on Reddit had predicted. We're adults. We'll figure it out. The emotions from that night had settled, and we had clearer heads to move forward. But then, he had the audacity to say, I hate that you didn't tell me sooner. That you weren't even going to tell me at all if Tanya hadn't found out. I thought we meant more to each other than that. I laughed. A bitter, humorless laugh. I thought we did too, I said. Until you told me never to contact you again unless I was dying. Silence. Because he knew. He knew it had been an extreme, unnecessary thing to say, no matter how badly he'd wanted to cut contact back then. Finally he muttered, I'm sorry. I sighed. I'm sorry too. What else could we do? We don't have the luxury of holding grudges anymore. We have a kid to raise. Then he dropped another bombshell. Grace and I aren't together anymore. I blinked. What? It was mutual, he claimed. Yeah, right. You don't go from newly engaged to completely over in 18 hours without something messy happening behind the scenes. I didn't push. If he was sparing me the details, that was his choice. But I did feel bad for Grace. Because even if she misplaced her anger at me, she didn't deserve this. So, I did end up letting Jeff come to my baby shower. When we talked the Monday before, I laid out 3 rules. We are not together. No touching me, hugging me, or putting your hands on my stomach unless I say it's okay. We don't have any serious conversations until after the baby shower. If there's an awkward vibe, we ignore it for the day. You stay in a hotel. I needed my home to be my space, especially if things got overwhelming. He agreed immediately. He was just happy to be included. Then the next day he called again. Would it be okay if my mom came too? I had already anticipated this, so I said sure. Then, another call. Can my brother and sister come as well? At that point I had to laugh. But I wasn't surprised. Jeff's family is close-knit. They always show up for each other. I had no issues with his siblings, especially his sister. We'd always gotten along. His sister even messaged me privately to make sure I was really okay with it. I told her I was. Their flight landed Friday afternoon, and my parents, who do not like Jeff anymore, surprised me by hosting a family dinner. Because as much as they dislike him now, they know that we're connected forever. Our families should at least be acquainted. When Jeff arrived, things were awkward. The first thing he did was lean down to say hi to my stomach. The baby kicked. When I told Jeff, his face lit up. So I let him feel. His mom was overjoyed, saying, he already knows his daddy's voice. I didn't have the heart to tell her the baby had been kicking for a full 30 minutes before they walked in. Dinner was fine. We mostly talked about the baby shower. Then, somehow, we went around the table suggesting baby names. And I won't lie, I was a little bummed. When I thought I'd be doing this alone, I had sole naming power. Now, I have to run everything by Jeff. And some of his name suggestions were awful. The baby shower. It was a long day but perfect. Luckily, Tanya was 2,000 miles away and couldn't ruin anything. We had a big co-ed shower with games for both men and women. Since Jeff was just a guest, I felt a little bad, so we gave him some last-minute roles, like explaining the rules for the bottle-chugging game, tea not beer, and judging a best dad joke competition. We even took some family photos. I was worried about this part, about it feeling like we were playing house. But honestly, I was having such a great time I didn't even mind. More importantly, he respected my boundaries. Before he put his arm around me or touched my stomach for pictures, he asked. That alone was such a relief. After the shower, I invited Jeff's family to my house. I know some people thought I wanted to keep my address from him forever, but obviously once the baby comes, that won't be an option. This was just the first step. After Jeff and his family left, things felt strangely quiet. My routine was back to normal, but my mind was still processing everything. Jeff has been texting me daily, mostly to check in and ask how I'm feeling. He's also been asking if I need anything for the baby, which is nice but also feels a little surreal. Just a couple of months ago, he was living his life with no plans for fatherhood, and now he's suddenly stepping up in ways I never expected. I appreciate it, but I can't lie, there's still a part of me waiting for the other shoe to drop. I told myself that I would let his actions speak louder than his words, and so far he's been showing up. A few days after the baby shower, Jeff sent me a long message telling me that he officially put in the request to go remote at work. He said that his boss was supportive, and it should be finalized soon. He didn't ask to stay with me, thank God, but he did ask if I had any recommendations for apartments or short-term rentals nearby. I gave him a few suggestions but made it clear that he would need to figure this out on his own. He said he understood and promised he wouldn't expect me to handle anything for him. My parents still aren't thrilled about him moving here, but they haven't said much about it since the baby shower. My dad especially is still holding a grudge. I can tell he's waiting for Jeff to mess up, but I really hope he doesn't. My sister, on the other hand, has been surprisingly neutral. She keeps reminding me that I don't have to make any decisions about Jeff beyond co-parenting. I think she knows that a small part of me still has feelings for him, even though I refuse to acknowledge them. It's hard not to when he's suddenly so involved. But I keep reminding myself of what he did, how he hurt me, how he chose someone else. Speaking of Grace, I did end up looking at her social media. She's deleted all traces of Jeff and hasn't made any public posts since their broken engagement. I don't feel bad for her, but I do wonder if she ever realized that she was just his second choice too. It's not my problem, but the thought lingers in my mind sometimes. Meanwhile, my pregnancy is progressing as expected. The baby is healthy and my doctor says everything is looking good. I've been feeling more tired lately, which makes work a little harder, but I'm managing. My coworkers still bring up Jeff constantly, which is kind of annoying. I know they mean well, but I wish they'd stop acting like he's some kind of fairy tale prince just because he's tall and attractive. One of them even joked that I should just marry him and make it easier on everyone. I laughed it off, but inside it irritated me. If only they knew how much I cried over him. Jeff has started asking more questions about the birth plan, which I wasn't expecting. He wants to be in the delivery room, but I haven't decided yet. I told him that I'd think about it, but that ultimately, I need to do whatever makes me feel the most comfortable. He said he understood, but I could tell he was a little disappointed. I don't want to hurt him, but I also can't prioritize his feelings over my own right now. I know the next few months are going to be complicated. Jeff moving here changes a lot of things, and I don't know what the future holds. But for now, I'm just taking it one day at a time. TL dear, Jeff has officially started the process to move closer before the baby is born. He's still texting and checking in daily, but I'm letting his actions speak louder than words. My family is still wary of him, but we're all just focused on the baby. I don't know if I want him in the delivery room yet, and I'm keeping my distance emotionally for now. The past few weeks have been a whirlwind. Jeff got his remote work approval finalized, and he officially signed a lease for an apartment about 15 minutes from my place. He moves in next month. He's been sending me updates on packing, asking for recommendations on furniture, and checking in constantly about the baby. It's still weird for me sometimes. This is the same man who once told me he never wanted kids, and now he's sending me links to baby cribs and car seats. I appreciate the effort, but I also still have my guard up. My parents, while still wary, have been coming around a little. My dad, in particular, has softened slightly, probably because Jeff has actually been showing up. He hasn't flaked, hasn't backed out, hasn't given them any reason to say, "I told you so." But my mom did pull me aside the other day and tell me to make sure I wasn't confusing his effort with love. She reminded me that being a good father doesn't automatically mean he's the right person for me. I told her I knew that, but deep down I wonder if I do. Jeff and I have had more serious talks since the baby shower. We've discussed parenting styles, how we'll handle holidays, and what our expectations are for the first few months. We've also talked about boundaries, what I am and am not comfortable with. He's been respectful of everything I've asked, which is reassuring. He even asked if I wanted to make an official co-parenting plan in writing, just so I would feel secure. I told him I'd think about it, but the fact that he suggested it without me bringing it up meant a lot. The name conversation went better than I expected. I told him my top choices, and surprisingly he loved one of them right away. We didn't have to argue or compromise much at all. It just felt right. As for the last name, I decided to go with Jeff's. Not because I feel pressured, but because it genuinely doesn't matter to me. My son will always be mine regardless of the name on his birth certificate. The biggest decision I had to make was whether or not I wanted Jeff in the delivery room. He asked again recently, and I could see how much it meant to him. But at the end of the day, I need to feel comfortable and safe in that moment, and right now, I don't know if I would with him there. So I told him no. I expected him to be upset, but he just nodded and said he understood. He asked if he could at least be at the hospital, and I told him yes. He took it well, which honestly made me feel better about everything. We're in a good place right now, and I want to keep it that way. My coworkers are still convinced we'll end up back together, but I've stopped entertaining those conversations. I don't know what the future holds, and I don't need to figure it out right now. My focus is on having a healthy baby and making sure we're both okay. Jeff has been consistent, and for now that's enough. Jeff finalized his move, and we've had more serious discussions about parenting. We agreed on a baby name, and I decided to give the baby his last name. I told Jeff he couldn't be in the delivery room, and he respected my decision. We're in a stable place right now, and I'm just taking things one step at a time. This story is a reminder that people can change, but it's up to us to decide whether that change is enough. Growth takes time, and trust isn't rebuilt overnight. Whether it's co-parenting, relationships, or personal boundaries, the most important thing is making choices that align with your own well-being and future, not just what others expect or hope for. What about you? Does this story resonate with you? Have you ever had to navigate an unexpected situation with an ex-co-parent, or someone who hurt you in the past? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your experiences. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Your support helps keep these stories going.